Welcome to the Great Noticing Podcast with MaryAnn and Emily.
The Great Noticing is about our awakening as people, professionals, parents, and leaders. Noticing empowers us to unravel the old narratives that dominated and defined us.
Noticing supports new patterns and celebrates behaviors that help us create and step into the life we desire. What are you noticing lately?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Great Noticing. My name is MaryAnn Means Dufresne. I am the founder and CEO of Collective Growth, a leadership development and advising consultancy located in Fort Worth, Texas.
And my name is Emily McAnally. I am a VP at a tech startup, and I am MaryAnn's sister.
Yes, and this podcast, it's our very first episode, is called The Great Noticing. And this idea came from just our own lives. I actually woke up in the middle of the night one night after we'd talked about this concept and having just a lot to say in the world and wanting to expand these conversations beyond the two of us or our close friendships. And we were thinking about what is our topic? What is our theme? And this idea of noticing in the world and the power that it has for us to non-judgmentally approach ourselves and others and the situations that we're in, to kind of peel back the layers of stories to really end or to shift old stories for us and create new narratives for our lives. So as we talked about noticing, Emily, what came up for you?
Well, I was so excited about when you kind of came up with this idea of us having these discussions. I've always loved, the discussions that we have together and that we have with our close friends. And I've always thought that we tend to get to a really soulful place really quickly.
Yeah.
So when you brought up the idea of doing this podcast, my first inclination was to resist it and say, I was fear-based and said, this isn't something, nobody wants to hear from me. There are so many podcasts out there.
Yeah.
How could we even do something different?
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that was my first reaction.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is rooted in one time a therapist told me that what I would call my inner critic is actually my ego.
Yeah.
So that was my ego protecting myself and not wanting to embarrass myself or what would people think about this. And, for me, what noticing has been lately is how, especially in my professional life, how my ego maybe has held me back, has kind of kept me from being courageous and pursuing things. The old adage of like, if you don't really try, then you don't fail. I remember kind of holding on to that like it was a little, pet that needed to be nurtured. Like you water it and feed it and all that as like a teenager.
Yeah.
And I'm noticing that an age, frankly, that was scary to me. Like I'm in my mid-30s and, I was afraid that getting older was something that was scary. I'm noticing that I'm finally feeling comfortable, free. Yeah. I'm like, you get a seat at the table. There's this awesome Michelle Obama quote where she's like, you get a seat at the table and you think that all these, before having said seat, you think that all these people are geniuses and that you don't deserve to be there. And then you get a seat at the table and you realize
these are
human beings
who are brilliant.
Right.
But I am also brilliant. And
right.
That idea that we're all genius in our own way. And Albert Einstein talked a lot about that idea of genius, that we all have this capacity. And I so identify with the statements you made about the space being full. And can we enter this? It's very competitive. There's so many voices
saturated
from me, right? And that my journey in that has been, that doesn't matter. There are things that I have to say, that I'm called to say, that we're called to say, that people want to hear and that people want to participate in a conversation.
Right.
And that's one of the things that we want to do with The Great Noticing too, is hear from experts who we love and adore,
or non-experts,
because in some ways we're all both,
right?
That clients of Collective Growth and friends of ours and leaders in the community, to hear what they're noticing and how this ability to notice with curiosity in a non-judgmental way is changing or has changed their perspective of the world.
Right.
And I think it'd be really important for me right now to say, I'm noticing that this is your coffee and that we need to switch.
I wondered why my coffee was so disgusting. I was like,
there.
This is terrible. Cheers. I'm sorry. Yeah. You don't have much of your coffee
I don't
left.
have much coffee left, but it'll be better than yours.
Enjoy that last disgusting sip.
So guys, that was the power of noticing that we get what is ours. It comes back to us.
Oh my gosh, this is delicious. Thank God. I was like, what is wrong with me? Why did I just make that terrible coffee? It's because MaryAnn doesn't you don't eat sugar, right?
I try to do as low sugar as possible.
Okay, well, I'm a high sugar kind of gal.
Yeah.
Which is why my coffee is
balance.
delicious.
Yeah. Balance. I couldn't drink it. Yes. So, yes, the power of noticing and all that it can do for us in our lives and in our work. And so workplace, Emily. So what are some of the things that you've been noticing in terms of your relationship to your work or your workplace in general?
Well, I want to take like the flip side. So I noticed when you kind of just brought up this whole conversation months ago, how I kind of always I would take my first step with a level of diminishing myself. Kind of, I remember one of my favorite former coworkers one time at the end, I had said something like, we were having this big, product team sync, and they were looking to me for answers and kind of guidance.
Yeah.
And I remember I would say, I'm not an expert, but, and after the call, he called me and he was like, stop doing that. They need you to be their expert.
Yeah.
And so the flip side of that really, shout out to Amen. That really stuck with me. He was like, stop diminishing yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think I do that because I kind of want to under promise and over deliver.
Yeah.
Again, another protection mechanism. But on the flip side of that, the other thing that I've been noticing is I'm proud of myself for like little wins.
Yeah.
Like I'll come to a call. It used to be before I'd come to a call with, I don't know, some, big pharma, right? And it's like their whole marketing team is on the call. I would prepare like crazy. I would take copious notes before. I would almost have a script written out for like,
so
if
you're
they ask,
ready for every scenario.
Right.
Yeah.
Like if they're going to ask me X, I'm ready for Y. And I would over prepare. And it would make me so nervous. Like my hands would be shaking. I might not even go off mute the whole call, but my hands were shaking.
Yeah.
And I'm little wins. Like I don't do that anymore.
It's amazing.
I just kind of chill out and show up. And this isn't like a do or die. And I'm not alone here. I have other teammates with me.
Yeah.
And I'm really proud of myself. And I've noticed that whether consciously or not, I've kind of started to divert that cycle of constantly feeling like I don't belong or like I don't deserve to be there. I mean, imposter syndrome, like everybody has it. Right.
Everybody has it. Yeah.
Right. So I'm proud of myself for, even if it was subconsciously, stop being so mean to myself, basically, and just showing up authentically as I am. And if I don't have all the answers, that's okay.
Yeah. That's right.
I want to know what you've been noticing, and whether it's personally in your own work or whether certain patterns that you've been noticing with clients, et cetera.
One of the things, and there's so many, but one of the things I've noticed is how often, because I grew up in both did in a performative household. So get it done at all costs, get a smile on your face, have a good attitude, go for it.
Yeah.
That there are so many things I've glossed over in my work and in my career, assuming that everything is okay because I wanted everything to be okay all the time. And that for me, and we'll talk about this soon, has really been a key feature of how I handle conflict, is just to pretend like it's not there. So often with clients, I will not talk about, or I'm tempted to not talk about the thing that's really happening, like kind of the elephant in the room, and talk about all the other elements that can move us forward toward a goal. But if I'm not paying attention to the things that the heart of the issue and the things that are toughest to discuss, we're really just band-aiding everything.
Yeah.
So for me, becoming braver around guiding conversations and modeling that for my clients, because those are skills that we're really working on, but how easy it is to skip over what's really happening, whether that's with my clients, with my husband, with my kids, where we talk about all the stuff that makes it look better, but not necessarily the stuff that makes the situation healed.
Yeah, almost like it's shallow. Like you're not willing to dive into the deep end to really create change.
And I think there's a slowing down to do that. And we were even talking about this morning, there's a conversation that could be had with someone that would take a slowing down in that moment and a vulnerability that I will tell myself all these reasons why it's not worth it. It won't make a difference. I don't have time. This person will be mad. All these things that could hold me back, when if I made that decision to step into it gently and with curiosity, which is a part of noticing, that could change the whole relationship dynamic and the whole scenario very differently.
So I have a question.
Please.
To that point, what if I've had several friends talk, when your girlfriends are talking about your work lives, it always feels like there's somewhat of a theme where there's this like leader who they have to placate and they're afraid to have honest conversations with said leader about, and how would you recommend someone, especially, when there's a power dynamic going on there, right? Have honest conversations, honest feedback with a leader where maybe it doesn't feel safe to do so. But I get, like, for me, not being 100% honest really pulls at my heartstrings. It makes me so angry and I feel duplicitous.
Right.
So when someone if they're frustrated with leadership or something like that, how do they gauge whether it's going to be worth it for them? Could it put their job in jeopardy? Could it, because that's the thing that you always hear.
Sure.
And then if I were a leader, right? We'd all like to think that,
I would,
and I am a leader in certain ways.
Yes. If you were the leader.
Right. Yeah. I would want my folks, the people that work for me to feel safe in providing feedback that might be hard for me to hear.
Right. Right. And so I think we as conscious leaders model that. We ask for the feedback. We were talking about the power of feedback earlier today. And for someone who's trying to determine if it's a safe place to provide feedback, your body is probably telling you that it's not a safe place. If you're wondering if it is.
Yeah.
Because, and does that mean that you leave your job immediately? No. But there are situations where we can start to test the waters. And in essence, we're leading our leader in that space around how we can build trust and provide a safe space. Sometimes the space is not going to be safe. And so and this is something we've talked a little bit about, and something I've been thinking about more and more, is if we are moving towards self-actualization, and if we believe that God has a plan or the divine has a plan for us that we can step into, then we're not limited by what the boss says. So we could say, I'm going to leave this job. I'm going to be responsible about it. I'm going to, have X amount saved up. Or I'm going to have, I'm going to work with a recruiter or a headhunter, whoever it is. I'm going to have options. But can we challenge ourselves to do the right thing for us, even when it feels scary?
And I think something, you've said this to me before, is with so many people, we kind of put our leaders on this divine pedestal where they're responsible for our well-being, they're responsible for our financial success. If they almost are omnipotent in our lives. Yeah. And I remember one time you were talking about a client that you had spoken to and said, so-and-so is not your God.
That's right.
They are not don't give them that power. And that isn't to say that we don't respect our leaders or that we don't, follow them.
Or that we don't live in reality. We have bills to pay. So I'm not saying, do whatever you want whenever you want and the divine is going to catch you.
Right.
We don't test things that way. We don't act crazy. However, can we push ourselves a little bit around we can pursue our goals. We deserve to be in a healthy work environment, in a healthy family environment. And so what boundaries can we set around that and stop all of the self-questioning and beating ourselves up around, am I doing the right thing, or what can I, blah, blah, blah. Take a deep breath, which key to noticing, to living lives that we want to live, is to be able to breathe and be able to be in a centered place. And believe that we have the power to be creators in our own lives.
Yes. Yeah.
Because the whole conversation around, can I have this conversation? Can I give feedback? Blah, blah, blah. We're wanting to create. It's like we're wanting to step into being creators, but we're still in this victim place of I'm not in charge and everybody else has all this power.
Yeah. Is there something that you've noticed within your personal life that is, because I think you said something to me, honestly, right before we started, that noticing wasn't just about about acknowledging toxic cycles that don't serve us anymore. Noticing could be something really beautiful, like a breakthrough, or a light bulb moment, or noticing something that you're really proud of yourself for, or like healthy patterns. Cycles don't just have to be negative. Cycles can be really healthy.
They can be virtuous.
Right. Is there something, whether it's personal or professional, that you've noticed lately that you'd like to talk about?
Yes. So personally, and we're humans approaching life. We're the same person dealing with the same issues and the same themes, whether it's work, whether it's personal, whether it's romantic relationship, and noticing how our way of being is generational. And how impacted we are by the wonderful things in our families as we were raised, by the not so great things, by our parents' unmet needs, and then wondering, how are my unmet needs being played out in my children's lives? And when I see their behavior, which is normally wonderful and amazing, but I see myself in them and some of my heartaches too, and watching that and trying not to watch it autobiographically. Like, this is my kid's life, but I'm still trying to peel back all of the layers around family of origin and what I'm experiencing now, and not continuing those generational patterns. But what about you?
I would say similarly. I mean, I think our generation is so lucky in that, therapy has been normalized.
Thank you, Lord.
Even this discussion that we're having right now about cycles and trauma and all of these words that just weren't a part of our vocabulary when we were growing up in the mid 90s.
Right.
And I'm noticing how, for example, I have to tell this story.
Please.
One of my kids, the oldest one, is how would you describe my oldest child? I'm just curious.
Oh, this is amazing. She is self-defined.
Yeah.
She knows exactly who she is and what she wants. And that is the most amazing thing. And it can be probably the most difficult thing as a parent.
It makes me want to cry because that's who I wanted to be when I was her age, and who I want to be now. She's not a people pleaser. Like, oh my gosh, I'm still trying to unpack all of my people pleasing, tendencies. Yeah. And that does not occur to her that she should base her sense of self or her value on how somebody else feels about her. Oh my God. And she's 5. So bravo. I want to be more like her.
Well, you've supported that in her.
Well, too. And that was my punchline.
Yeah, sorry.
And the way
sorry, I'm affirming and killing your punchline.
No, thank you. I'm glad we're on the same page. The story I want to tell about her, that was something that was almost a little bit triggering at the same time, where I was in awe of it.
Yeah.
Was we were out to dinner with friends, and one of the couples there, you've heard the story before, she had never met before.
Yeah.
And she did something that was funny, but she wasn't intending to be funny.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the male in the couple, laughed. And he's like this big, 6'5" former football player and big dude.
Yeah.
And she looks at him and she goes, and very calmly, she didn't shout it. She just very calmly said, "Don't laugh at me. I don't like that."
Mm-hmm.
And at first,
it's triggering to me to hear that story, because if it were my child, I'd probably say that's rude.
Yeah.
We don't speak that way to adults.
For me,
for right or wrong.
Right. For me, I was like, I don't want to tell her that especially if a man makes her feel uncomfortable, that she has to let him make her feel uncomfortable because she doesn't want to be a bitch or whatever.
Yes, absolutely.
And in the moment, it took me a second because we have to be a good girl, be nice,
be sweet.
That kind of training that we grew up in. That was my first inclination, was to tell her, "Oh, Vivian, that was rude. Don't speak to him like that." Right. But then I took a second and I was like, whoa, that was really cool. She's 5 and she can set boundaries regardless of, who's speaking to her, whether it's male or female or whatever. She can set healthy boundaries better than I could maybe even a year ago.
Yeah. You know what, too, that I'm like, a lot for me and a lot in the situation depends on how healthy and depends on the ego of that man. Because it's like when my little one, my older one was little, and he didn't want to hug somebody, and the adult wanted a hug or a kiss or something, and I never would force him because it's his body and he gets to choose. And some adults would be great with that, and some adults would be offended.
Well, then they're emotional infants.
Exactly. So in this situation, how did he? I think I'm imagining a man. Who may be immature, because many men are not, but a man being immature in his response to that and thinking, what a rude child, or versus a person saying, "Oh, thank you for telling me that you don't like that. You are a full human. You're not a half human because you're a child.
Yeah.
And therefore I can respect how you feel about something." That's mind blowing. Like, can we move toward a place in life where everybody can say kindly, kind but firm, how we feel about something, and we all can react to that from a healthy ego place. And so I'm noticing my response as a parent, my response as a person, that if a child said that to me, I would affirm them in it.
Right.
But I'm worried about what somebody else would think about my child or my niece or whoever. And I think from the perspective of growth as a parent, how to help my child express those kinds of things in a kind way.
Yeah. I think, but it's interesting, like, hearing that you were concerned about what he thought.
Yeah.
And as the mom, I was more, for a second, I was like, ooh, is he going to think I'm a bad mom because my kids, that he perceives that as being rude.
Yeah.
But what's more important to me is she grows up for like knowing in that moment, whether her little soul knew it or not, that mom didn't tell her that she was bad for setting a boundary.
Isn't that amazing?
And I was really, really proud of that. And
phenomenal.
It was so dichotomous to how we were raised.
Yeah. Well, and like we adopt the way that we were raised, and it becomes, this is part of our inner critic, part of our ego. We have to perpetuate that to support ourselves in our whole world, in our whole paradigm being okay. And this story is the kind of situation that changes a paradigm. So the noticing that has happened, even in this little vignette, breaks open what you thought to be true about the world and about life.
Yeah.
And that is the great noticing.
Yeah.
In a nutshell. So thank you.
Thank you.
That it's those little moments where we're able to say, I am secure enough and I'm curious enough to step out of the way that I've been living and think about it. So it's this metacognition element of, I'm going to give myself the space to look at this and say, here's what I knew to be true. What else is also true?
What else is also true?
Because there's a whole world of things that is opposite and also true. And this is a concept that I work on with teams and organizations that are in conflict, is we get locked into these patterns and these belief systems, or this understanding of who this leader is, or what this department is, or what my spouse
We have to label
is.
people.
Yeah, that's how we make sense of the world,
Yep.
right? And that's where we grow up in that. We have to label boy, girl, all these different things. And we get locked in it because that's how we made sense of it. And now we're reaching an age where we can start to release some of
Everything
that.
isn't binary. Yeah.
Consider some things a little bit differently. And it's so powerful to say, here's one experience, here's another experience that's the opposite, that is equally valid.
Right.
And what's hard sometimes is that when we bridge that chasm, when we get to the what else is also true, and our brains can hold that, some people stuck in the this is the way it has to be can't move over.
Yeah. And you have to be, there was this video that came up on my Instagram where it was I don't know if maybe she's like a lifestyle workplace guru.
Yeah.
Where she was saying, let them.
Mm-hmm.
Like if the guy who Vivian set the boundary, who my child set the boundary with, didn't like it, let
That's
him.
okay.
Let him.
Yeah. Let people be uncomfortable.
Yeah. Like it doesn't, we are not respond, like, just the freedom of saying, let them.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have to, that's one thing, again, talking back to a noticing place that I'd really like to work on is not getting so hyper emotionally involved in every little thing that happens throughout my day, usually workplace related, right? Because that's what we do all day.
So in it.
Yes.
So in it
and
that
like,
you can't even have perspective on it.
Well, and every time something happens, especially one of my mentors who will hopefully come on the pod soon, she's just, oh my God, she's incredible. And I can't wait for her.
She's coming on the pod.
Yeah, she's coming on the pod.
She's amazing.
She said one time when I was like fretting about something or, telling her about something that was freaking me out, she was like, this is not something that should be keeping you up at night. Mm-hmm. This is something that should be keeping so-and-so up at night.
Yep. And
it was like, oh, I don't have to, because I'll turn myself into this little tornado of...
And it feels good. Like, when you're in that, it is so exciting.
Like I'm passionate.
Like you're, And some of that is the process of it, right? That some of it is how we sort through all of that. Mm-hmm. But then that's when other people, like your mentor, or like when we're talking about something and I'm like, whoa, cool it, sister. You are so in this that you can't see. But then that's the phase.
You feel like that when I tell you about my...
Sometimes. Yeah. And you do when I tell you
I know,
too, teasing. Right? Because we are so impassioned by it. That
well, because you're outside of it and you can look at it and go, wow, this is not that big of a deal. Right. In 24 hours, it's not going to matter.
Yes.
But when you're in it in that moment, and I think, when you are, you're so, I don't even, like those yarn balls or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not that I've ever had one, but I've seen them.
Love those things.
It's like a rubber band ball. There's like, you're so tightly wound and it's like all you can think about. And it almost, something I've noticed about myself that I also need to work on is when I have the opportunity to work on when I'm angry about something, when I'm fired up, I call you, I call dad, I call mom, I call my mentor, it's like this fire that I'm stoking.
Yeah.
And you get like on a high on this, I get on an anger high.
Awareness to know. And so is that part of a healthy process? Is it that you keep doing the same thing and you don't change anything because that's important? Is it that you notice it when you're on this high and you're triggered because that's what's happening in your body is your fight or flight response has been activated and you are fighting without fighting. The whole fight is happening behind the scenes and you are intellectualizing around it and you're developing your arguments that most of them are never said.
That's exactly what I was just about to say. I bet you anything, part of the process is I know I can't actually do anything about it. And I know I can't take this...
that you're going to choose not to do anything about it. You could.
Well, I can't.
It's both.
Let's I'm trying to use some sort of metaphor. Like if I'm a sailor on a ship, I can't redirect the ship.
Sailor and ship metaphors.
I don't
Love that.
If I can't completely redirect the ship, I'm one sailor.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, but maybe I get so intensely, I dive
start a
in.
little skirmish among the other squabs.
No, I can't do that either, because then that's like the ship's gonna sink or something.
No, that is what people do. Like, you're really angry at your leader.
Yeah.
And so you start infighting with the group because you can't fight with your leader.
Oh God, you're so right.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So then you're sending Slack messages like, oh my God, I can't.
Yeah, the
back department is
the back channeling.
Because we all have this angst.
Yep.
Around what's happening in the organization, and we feel like the whole exercise is futile, but we've got this energy.
It has to go somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're stirring up all this trouble.
Back to the point of, how do we have healthy conflict within an organization so that you're not doing all this back channeling,
Right.
You're not, let's use the sailor metaphor, you're not causing some sort of mini mutiny that isn't going to actually enact change.
Right.
It just creates a cancer within your
It
organization.
hurts everybody else's experience.
Exactly.
Yeah. And how much of our ability to handle conflict is related to our own ego,
and is related to, for our
That's right.
next episode,
webisode. I don't know.
Podisode.
Podisode. I like that.
We should trademark that.
Mm-hmm.
Hashtag Podisode. For the next Podisode.
We should. Are we announcing it?
I think we're announcing it.
Okay.
What are we talking about next?
We're talking about conflict, handling conflict in the workplace, how it's related to our lives and our development.
And I thought this was so profound. I hope I don't mess this up, but basically you got it. You know where I'm going.
Well, how it's related to our way of handling conflict in our childhood, or the way that we were taught to do that. And is that pervasive for us throughout our lifespan, and lifespan and environment?
Mm-hmm. I think that is, you said that this morning, and it's one of those like simple things where it's like, yeah, of course, the way that you were raised to handle or not handle conflict, you're going to continue that throughout your life. And obviously it's going to impact how you operate within a workplace setting. But you saying that was like,
right. And how is it working for us is one of the big questions. Is we can choose to operate in any way that we want. We can keep doing what we've always done, and the world would be fine. People have done that for generations. We now have the opportunity, with access to information, with freedom of conversation, with education, everything that we have the opportunity to pursue, to think differently, to act differently, to find the way of being that we really want in the world.
Yeah. Let go of the cycles that aren't serving us anymore, and continue to pursue breathe new life into new cycles.
That's right. Awesome. Well, we've loved getting to talk about the great noticing. It's been profound in our lives, and we hope that these conversations will be beneficial and helpful and enjoyable. Thank you for joining us today, and we can't wait to see you next time to talk about conflict.
Yay,
Thanks,
can't
everybody.
wait. Thanks, y'all.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Great Noticing Podcast. Don't forget to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform. And for more information and to keep up with MaryAnn and Emily, visit thegreatnoticingpodcast.com. And remember, what are you noticing lately?